Hello and welcome back to Tell Me Your Ghost Story. I'm your host, Cassie Askin, and today we hear Cat Elrod's stories. Cat is a special effects makeup artist and costume designer in the LA area, which, as you will hear about, has taken her to all kinds of strange and haunted places. But ironically, her scariest encounter happened at the happiest place on earth, Disneyland. So, without any further ado, let's get to Cat's stories. Hey, Kat, tell me your ghost story.
Ooh. All right. Hi, I'm Cat Elrod, and I'm a special effects makeup artist. I'm a costume designer. I primarily do theater now. I'm not really that afraid of the dark, and I'm not really that afraid of ghosts. I mean, I love scary things and I like to be scared, but I've had encounters over the years. So I grew up in Long Beach, California. I feel like Long Beach is ripe with ghosts. We've got the Queen Mary, and I went to Long Beach City College, and that was very haunted. But from a young age, I've always loved theater. And so my mom took me to my first show at the Long Beach Terrace Theater. I saw the Unsinkable Molly Brown, and ever since then, I was like, I've got to do this. And, almost every theater I've worked at, has been haunted, or people have had stories, their own encounters. And that kind of takes me to Disneyland, my Disney story. But before then, I went to Long Beach City College, and doing shows there, I stage managed. And, when you're the stage manager, you are the first one in and you're the last one out. You've got keys to the place. And so one of my favorite stories from Long Beach City College was one of the scene shop guys. His name was John Pike. And I don't know if he's still around or not because I haven't been there in a long time, but he was this amazing man who worked in the scene shop, and he'd been there for years and years and years. And him and the other fellow that worked there, they were working one night. There was a dance concert rehearsing on stage, and they were in the scene shop. And the only thing that separates the stage and the backstage from the scene shop are two big shop doors that are on either side, stage left and stage right, behind the stage. And so, not to be interrupted by the dancers, and so they wouldn't interrupt the dancers themselves, they had those doors closed, but they could hear through the walls the muffled sound of dancing and music and things like that. And it was kind of running late into the night, and all of a sudden, getting kind of late, and a gal came in and she's like, "Hey, I left my stuff on stage. Would it be okay if I went inside and got my things?" And he's like, "What are you talking about? You can hear the music. They're still in there practicing, rehearsing." And she said, "No, we left hours ago." And when they opened the door, the music stopped. And this is a story that they told me when I went to Long Beach City College, and I always kind of felt things in that theater. I haven't had real experiences, but like at that particular space, just sort of hearing what other people have told me. But I'll tell you what, stage left is pretty scary. And I didn't like to hang out there. But I went to Long Beach City College for theater, and I needed a job, right? And I wanted to do something that was in my line of work. And I done lights and sound and props, but I always loved costuming. And I decided to get a job at Knott's Berry Farm, and I really liked it there. And I worked a couple of years there. And actually, fun fact, when I was there, this was this was right around the turn of the century. Gwen Stefani's grandfather was the guard gate there, so he's a ghost now. But I left Knott's I worked in wardrobe there. I left Knott's to go to Disneyland because I really, I thought it was a better opportunity. It's a bigger company. And I thought, how amazing. I'm going to get to work wardrobe and entertainment costuming for Disney. It's going to be so cool. And I worked in talent, and that was the department that took care of all the princesses. And so we were there backstage, usually there during the day. Very, uneventful sort of job. You're giving costumes to princesses, and you're taking them back and taking things to dry cleaning and things. And I had the opportunity to work on the show Fantasmic. And I know a lot of people are familiar with that show, but if you're not, it's that really amazing show on Tom Sawyer Island. They've got barges going, back and forth across the rivers of America, and there's princesses, and there's pink elephants, and there's dancing monkeys, and there's all kinds of crazy characters from all the Disney movies. And there's a lot of fireworks, there's a lot of water. And it's like a nice big show. Well, they take all the entertainment costuming people and they put them on a barge and they send them over to the island before the show starts. Everybody gets everything set up. And then everybody, once it's close to showtime, goes to their stations. They do what they need to do. And then at the end of the night, everybody gets out of their costumes and they leave them there. And then it's our job to pack everything back up onto racks and things like that. And all the actors leave and everybody goes. So, but wardrobe is still there because we have a lot of things to do. And one of the things we have to do, if you are familiar with the show, there is a character. They're doing the song Pink Elephants. And they're basically in these weird lycra outfits with like aluminum poles. They're holding up the costume and they look like pink elephants. And they're dancing downstage. And there's big fans of water that are Fantasia's being projected on. And those costumes get soaking wet because of all the water spray and they're down by the water. So every night after the show, one person has to take those costumes to the mill house. Now, the mill house is, I guess, if you were looking from the audience at the Rivers of America and to Tom Sawyer Island, it would be on your right there. But if you're on stage, it's going to be on your left, and it's the furthest down left. And there's just this little shack, and we called it the mill house. And that's where you would take these aluminum frames wrapped in lycra or, spandex that were soaking wet. And because they're very difficult to take on and off, you would, for the run of that weekend's show, you would just hang them dry. And so it's only a one person job really. So you drag them over there. You're inside this little tiny cabin. And it is kind of a scary island. It's really, really dark and it's kind of rocky. And people who love Disneyland, it's so much fun to like go be there during the day. But that part of the stage or that part of the island, it's overgrown with trees and it's really rocky and it's really, really, really dark. And so it was kind of freaky, just, all by itself. But you go into that mill house and you're in there by yourself for a while, hanging these things up, making sure that everything's organized. And then it's your job to lock up. And then you join everybody back on the other side of the stage to push all the carts back onto the barge and go back to the wardrobe department and put everything away. Well, that night, and I don't know how long I'd been there, but I'd already been working Fantasmic for a while, but I'd never had that particular job before. It seemed like the kind of job that nobody really wanted. So I guess it was my turn. And I was putting these little things away. They were on the floor in front of me. I'm going to my left, grabbing one, hanging it up. They're on these little hooks. Grab it to my left, turn to my right, hang it up, grab it from my left, turn to the right, hang it up. And I was hanging it. And as I grabbed the one on the left, turned, and I was about to hang it up, I saw a little boy this is a very, very small room. I'm getting chills just like thinking about it right now. He was just sitting there in the corner and I can see it. He had his knees to his chest. He was wearing shorts and like little tall socks and a short sleeve shirt. And he had sort of mousy brown hair in like a bowl cut, but he had his knees to his chest and his arms wrapped around his knees and his head down. And I gasped, and I dropped, I just dropped everything and I ran out of there. And I went to the other side of the island and I was just like, I'm not doing this. Somebody needs to go do that. This has nothing to do with me anymore. And I was like really, really freaked out. And, this happened 2001, like a long time ago. And I can still see him sitting there and I know something happened. Like, I don't know, maybe I hallucinated or something, but I reacted. Like I gasped and I got the hell out of there. So I don't know. It scared the hell out of me. That's all. Yeah. So that whole thing just really freaked me out. And I never went back to do that particular job ever again. I did work at Disneyland for a little bit longer. And then, I quit to pursue other things. I was in college. I wanted to design theater. I wanted to see the world, those things. But I had asked, Disney's pretty tight-lipped when it comes to people dying there, but I had always heard sort of rumors about like, oh, these two brothers, this is the saddest story. They wanted to stay late after the park had closed so that they could ride the rides together. But we had heard this story or, people had talked about it before, but I wanted to know more because I thought, wow, did I see one of the little boys that drowned? Or we'll come to find out there's a couple of real stories about people that had been pulled from the river who tried to stay late. I think there was one, this is the one with the two brothers, and I don't think both of them died. I think the 10-year-old brother was saved, but the older brother, the 18-year-old brother, he went to go save his brother from drowning in the rivers of America, and he ended up passing, but did save his brother. So I don't know who I saw. Who knows? His clothes definitely looked like 60s or 70s because he was wearing, it was a time when like boys' shorts were a little short and he was wearing sort of those tall socks and a short sleeve t-shirt and the haircut. Because I remember it being a bowl cut. I couldn't see his face. Oh my God. If I saw his face, I don't think I'd be here right now. But he had a little bowl cut, which is very 70s. So I always thought, until I really did a little bit of homework online, I thought he was about 10 or 12. But I know that the two fatalities that were actually in the river, both of them were I think about 18 years old or 15 years old, something like that. So, but who knows? So I've had a million jobs. When you do theater, you know. So I worked at a coffee shop, and this is another Long Beach story. I'm telling you, Long Beach is very haunted. I worked at It's a Grind, which was just this amazing coffee shop that popped up around 1998. But I caught up with them. I think it was a little bit before, or maybe it overlapped with Disney and Knott's. I was hustling back then doing theater. And I worked at this really great little coffee shop, and this is the one at the traffic circle. So they had a few of them around town. But right now, if you go to the traffic circle, it is where Cyclone Noodle is. And I recommend the curry, but come for the curry, stay for the ghosts. At that time, it was a coffee shop called It's a Grind. And when I worked there were these three gals that worked at the coffee shop, and they all were roommates, right? So this is how I think the ghost came to the coffee shop. So they all lived together, and we would all party together. And they had a really great apartment off of Eximino or Termino. And so we'd go over there, and I'd hang out with them together, but I'd hang out with them individually. And eventually, after a while, a couple of them told me about experiences they were having in this apartment. And I was like, okay, yeah, tell me more. Like, he saw a ghost, whatever. Well, both of them independently described the same blonde, lanky girl. One of them thought they saw the girl at the end of her bed. She woke up in the middle of the night, and she said she saw this blonde girl just standing at the edge of her bed, and she just closed her eyes. And she was like, I'm dreaming, and ignored it. And the other gal said she saw her pass by a doorway. And so, you're not sure if you saw anything. You don't know if you can believe your eyes. But the third gal also had an experience. And we were all sitting down and telling the stories. And she was sort of the quiet one of the group. And we're all sitting down, and they're confirming that, yes, I saw her. Oh my God, I saw her too. And the last gal was like, I saw something, but something very clear. So when you come into the house and you walk in the door, there's a living room right in front of you. If you go to your left, there's a hallway. Take a couple of steps to the right, there's a doorway. There's the kitchen. Keep going straight down the hallway. To the left, there's a bathroom. And then go all the way to the end. And there are two bedrooms, one on either end of the hallway. Well, if you sit on the toilet in the bathroom with the door open, you can see into the room on the right. So she said she was home all alone, and she's using the restroom, and she was just sitting there, and all of a sudden she saw a girl like stumble out of the closet and cross the doorway. And she said she was glad she was on the toilet. Excuse me for being crude, but that she got out of there as quickly as she could. And then, we were all freaked out. But then one of them said they think that they may have brought her to the coffee shop. And we're like, okay, you believe it because you've had experiences, but you also think, okay, this is bullshit. Who knows? But one night it was closing time at the coffee shop. And when you close up at the coffee shop, two people have to close because there's an alarm system. So one person stays inside to turn out the lights and to hit the code. The other person goes outside of the door, and they have to make sure that the door is flush so that the sensor will catch. And then after you press the buttons, you got 30 seconds to leave that building and lock the door. And that's fine. So I was one inside. The gal went outside to hold the door closed. I hit the button, beep, 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 and I turned out the lights. Well, I turned and took a few steps, and I was coming around the corner. Well, the other gal must have left it was like one of those big plastic trash cans. Well, I tripped and I stumbled. I didn't fall all the way down, but I totally stumbled and knocked over the trash can, and I heard somebody laugh. And I just got the hell out of there. I did not pick up anything. I just got out of there, and I never saw anything else there, but people have said that they sometimes at night when they knew nobody was in there, when you have the light on in a room and there's just a little bit of room underneath the door and you can kind of see someone walking around, the shadow of someone walking around, that they would see that there. Or they'd hear something, like a voice or something. But, you question yourself. I heard someone laugh, and I know I heard someone laugh, but did I? I stumbled over the trash can. I made that noise too. And am I mistaken? But things happen over the years, and I don't know. I believe in a lot of that stuff. So, I'm plugging away at being a costume designer and going to school. I get a job at the Long Beach Playhouse, and my boyfriend at the time, so I'm working in the box office, and I'm designing shows sometimes. And he is a stagehand. And so sometimes he comes and he helps build sets. And if you know anything about the Long Beach Playhouse, well, they're the longest running theater this side of the Mississippi. right? I think they've been around for maybe 100 years or something like that. And they have two stages. They have a downstairs, three-quarter round thrust, 200-seat theater, which is really cool. And then upstairs, they have a studio theater, which is a little proscenium theater with 99 seats. And that, I don't know about the one downstairs, but the one upstairs is haunted. So, I'm working in the box office, and the shifts they don't end that late, 7 or 8 o'clock at night, something like that. But the build of shows would have to take place after rehearsals. So my boyfriend at the time would either come and hang out and wait until it was really late till after rehearsal, or if he could get started in there. But it usually is evening time, and he would go upstairs and start building things. Well, he'd been up there a few nights alone doing some stuff. And he had during the week been like, hey, why don't I'd been going home because I just worked a shift. I'm going home. He's like, hey, why don't you come and, hang out with me? Hang out with me while I build. Just be in the room. He never said anything. He didn't say he was scared. He never said he saw anything, but he kept asking. And then finally he was like really insistent. And I was like, Jesus, okay. So I go and I'm up there with him, and can I ask him, I'm like, why are you so insistent? He's like, because I'm not alone up here, you know? And he had experienced a couple of things during the week while he was alone. A lot of the times he was on a ladder, so he was like, oh my God, I can't do anything about it. He had been upstairs working on things. And in addition to hearing voices, right? He keeps the doors closed in there. He would hear voices in the lobby. He was once on a ladder and he heard someone run up the stairs, the back stairs, and they're padded, right? They're carpeted. So they're like muffled. But he said he would always hear like keys rustling, like someone walking around with their keys dangling on their belt loop or something. So he had had a few experiences and he was kind of freaked out. And so he wanted me to be there because he did not want to be alone. And I hadn't had any experiences there, but decided a couple years later to become a special effects makeup artist. So a couple years after I graduated from Fullerton, I went to Joe Blasco and I did certificates in special effects makeup and glamour and prosthetics and all that stuff. So I become a special effects makeup artist. I'm still doing costumes and things. And there is this stunt guy around town. His name is John Braver. And he's done things like, like Iron Man and Pirates of the Caribbean and movies like that. And he comes from Chicago and he wanted to do a haunt. He had tried to do one in Chicago, mildly successful. But he comes out here, and this is 2011, I think. And he put together this show. And because I wanted to be a makeup artist for film, I started doing student films. And the best place to do student films, if you're trying to break into anywhere, is USC, because they've got the equipment. The program is huge. And so there's a lot of people making films. So I got linked up with this guy, Victor, who was making short films. And I did a couple for him. He did some scary things. And then around 2011, early 2011, he messaged me and was like, hey, I'm linking up with this guy who's doing this haunted house. And come to find out, it was an immersive show. And this is at the time, like, there was no other immersive shows like in LA. I think the only other thing that was happening in the US was like Sleep No More in New York. So, but this show is gonna be a little bit different, kind of like Sleep No More, because I guess it's a tour, kind of open worldish, where you go around and you encounter all the characters and things like that. But this was a play, a haunted play. It ended up being Delusion. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with Delusion. The first year was just Illusion. The second year was Blood Right. And then subsequent years have been, Blue Blade and Crimson Queen and Valley of Hollows. And I don't know, there's so many of them. It's all, smashed into one huge year in my mind. But the gist of the show is that we are in old houses, right? So we started off, I think if you watch the new, oh my goodness, I can't remember his name. Why? Hello, Rob Zombie. Why I couldn't remember Rob Zombie's name. The new Halloween, right? And if you watch that movie, you see the house it's this big mansion and it has these huge white columns in front. And that's the house that we did our very first Delusion in. And it's really cool because right next door is Hattie McDaniel's house. She won the Oscar for Gone with the Wind. And then across the street is the house where they filmed People Under the Stairs. And that's one of my favorite movies. But this house, I think it was built like 110 years ago, something like that. And there had been, a few people who died there. There was a fire in the basement. A child died. And then who knows how many people die in houses, especially 100-year-old houses, So we get this house. It's really great. The show is amazing. It's a play. It's essentially a play, but it's an interactive play where instead of watching the show on a stage, you play your part and become part of the show. You've returned to the asylum where you were once a patient and you have to find Dr. Lowell, or you have to help Dr. Lowell, or you have to do something. So, we're working in this house and the very first year, it was a really small cast and, it was really like homegrown kind of because it was the first year we were doing it. But as we've gone through the years, it's grown. It's been an amazing show. There's some really great houses that we've been in, some more haunted than others, but the theme across all years is that there's always something in the house, and the people who really, really feel it are the actors. And so I like to ask them, like, oh, is there anything going on this year? And because actors are in rooms by themselves, right? The groups come through, groups of 8 come by every like 15, 20 minutes. You do the scene for the audience, you lead them to the next room, and you get kidnapped or you die or something happens. And then you wait in that, they go off, then you wait in that room until it's time for the next group to die for them. But it was, God, I wish I could remember the house, but there was 2 rooms that were connected by a bathroom. And one of the actresses was in one room and the other actress was in the room, you pass through the bathroom and she's in the other room. Well, usually if you got 15 or 20 minutes in between, you're going to come together, you're going to hang out, maybe you'll be on your phone or whatever. But she said she's sitting just on her phone with her back to the door, and she feels someone sit down on the bed because, these beds they're old and the mattresses are kind of lumpy, but she feels someone sit down. So she just starts talking. She thinks it's whoever that came from the other room. She said after about a minute, she realized the person was not responding. So she turned around and nobody was there, but there was an indentation of where someone had sat right on the other side of the bed. So that was pretty freaky. And people are in the basements of these places all alone and waiting in the dark. So if there isn't a ghost, it's still scary. But yeah, people have had a lot of experiences with the delusion. Actually, we just did, it's with the same company, Haunted Play. They do delusion, but they also do immersive events around town. And the most recent one we did was with the film Nosferatu. So Nosferatu came out on Christmas, and leading up to them, if you live in LA, you'll see these things around town where a film's coming up or a TV series is coming up. And so they do an activation. And so it's an immersive event where they turn, the city street into 1970s New York, and you get to experience the people, and everybody's got their hair and their makeup and their clothes like 1970s, and it's a promotion for whatever movie or whatever is happening. So we did one recently for Nosferatu, and we did it at the Masonic Temple at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. So it was one of the funnest things to be able to get there or stay after late and just like drive around the cemetery at night. But my favorite thing to do is no matter where I go, and I'm always asking people for their ghost stories, but who are the best people to ask for their ghost stories? Security, because they're sort of the silent presence there. They're there all night. And so we're like waiting for my boyfriend to bring the car around so we can load things up. And there's a couple of security guards hanging out front. And me and my friend who was working box office, we're just out there and we're like sort of chatting with them. And so we ask, oh, have you ever seen anything here? And he's like, yeah, I work at a lot of cemeteries. And he says, I see a lot of things that primarily we see shadow people, that is like the biggest thing that they see. And in the day, he said the freakiest thing for him was when he first started working and he would see shadow people during the day in the cemetery. At first you think it's just someone, but you realize they pass behind a tree and the tree is thin and you'd see them, wouldn't you? But then I asked him, I was like, okay, specifically here. He's like, yeah, ghost shadows and things like that. He said, but at the Masonic Temple, if you've been there or if you went to the Nosferatu activation, when you walk in, there's a little courtyard. Beyond that, there's another courtyard. But if you make a left and you go into another courtyard, on the side of the building, there's a staircase. It's just an exterior staircase so you can access the top floor. And he said he was coming around the corner and he was just, you just walk around to make sure that nobody's doing anything they're not supposed to be doing. It is Hollywood. So someone's always trying to do something. And he said he saw a woman climbing the stairs. And as he approached, he realized that she maybe really wasn't there. So he said, nope. And he got out of there and he wasn't too worried that she was breaking in. But he said a full body apparition. He said that's kind of where he drew the line. Like maybe he'll chase after a shadow, but he said, I don't get paid enough. I don't get paid enough to go chasing after ghosts like that.
Thank you so much to Kat for sharing her stories. I did happen to visit the Cyclo Noodles, formerly the coffee shop It's a Grind, where Kat's story about the ghost laughing at her took place, and I asked the employees if they ever experienced anything paranormal or unexplainable. They said no, which further adds to the theory that Kat's coworker kind of brought the ghost there with her. And the noodles were, in fact, very good. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, follow the pod wherever you consume it. Follow us on Instagram for photos from the show at Tell Me Your Ghost Story Podcast. And we got some fun stuff going on over on TikTok at Tell Me Your Ghost Story Pod. If you have a true paranormal story you'd like to share, please email it to tellmeyourghoststorypodcast at gmail.com. Until next time, my friends, good night to all, and to all a good night. Bye!